Good morning, this is your today's headlines for August 17, 2026. Let's begin with the top story. China is exporting more than AI models. It wants its data to influence the world's chatbots, raising fears that Beijing's narratives will spread with the technology. Researchers at the Beijing Institute of Technology tested ChatGPT on Chinese language questions and found the chatbot described former NBA star Yao Ming as the first Chinese woman to play professional basketball in the United States, and confused two classic works of Chinese literature, Journey to the West and Dream of the Red Chamber, which were written 2 centuries apart. This illustrates how training data can shape outputs in ways that may reinforce particular national narratives. Turning to international diplomacy, the United States and Iran have blown through their deadline to agree on a broad deal to end war. President Trump said a ceasefire agreed in June would lead to limits on Iran's nuclear program and finish the conflict, but the two sides appear far apart. They missed a 60-day deadline to reach a deal to curtail Iran's nuclear program under the terms of that ceasefire. Trump had announced the Memorandum of Understanding with great fanfare 2 months earlier, yet the short-lived agreement failed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which Iran effectively blockaded after Israel and the United States attacked in late February, and did not bring the war to a close. Next, the president has ordered the Pentagon to curtail military exercises with ally South Korea. In a social media post, Trump scolded South Korea for not helping denuclearize Iran and also praised North Korea and its leader. He said he had instructed the Pentagon to reduce joint military exercises with South Korea, a longtime U.S. ally and a linchpin of America's national security strategy in the Asia-Pacific region. Analysts warn the move may heighten worries among Asian allies about what the United States is willing to do to deter China, given the enormous distraction and resource drain of the U.S.-Israel war against Iran, and note the United States is running low on critical weapons and shifting resources out of Asia to the Middle East. Moving to Europe, a Ukrainian bank worker and his family face life in a Russian prison on terrorism charges they deny. Artem Murdid, his mother and his girlfriend are accused of terrorism. They say they did nothing wrong. Russia claims Murdid is a killer who followed orders from Ukrainian intelligence to plant bombs in Melitopol after Russian troops captured it. Murdid insists he did nothing wrong and says that after his arrest in March 2023, pro-Russian guards repeatedly beat him, shocked him with electric charges, forced him to watch his mother endure the same treatment, and threatened to throw him into a cold cell. In the United Kingdom, scrutiny continues over the gifts and support provided by George Cottrell to Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader, even after Cottrell's candidate won last week's special election in Clacton. Before becoming known as Posh George, a near-constant sidekick to Farage, Cottrell traveled to Las Vegas in 2014 to meet with drug traffickers for whom he offered to launder money. He was 21, met the traffickers on the dark web under the pseudonym Bill, and said he would take $20,000, send it to offshore accounts, and return it clean. A federal indictment filed in 2016 later alleged he threatened to extort the traffickers for the Bitcoin equivalent of a substantial sum. A personal story of historical reckoning emerges from the Netherlands. A woman who secured the criminal file of her grandmother, a Nazi collaborator, offered to share it with a Jewish family that had been betrayed. Then she balked and a new dispute ensued. Journalist Judith Zilversmith in Amsterdam described receiving an Instagram message in October 2023 from an unknown woman who said she had information about Zilversmith's family. The message read, "For several months now, I've had a knot in my stomach. I would like to share something with you, but I am so afraid of writing something wrong. 2 years ago, the exchange highlights the lingering tension when families confront painful pasts. Back in the United States, a case shows how airport arrests are becoming a new front in the administration's mass deportation drive. Brent Jindra, a tech salesman who voted for President Trump 3 times because of his aggressive immigration agenda, never imagined the crackdown would ensnare his own wife. Last month, moments after the couple got off their flight in Burbank, California, a young man in a brown hooded sweatshirt stopped Galina Babraneva and told her, "Congratulations, you've been chosen for secondary screening," according to the couple's recollection. The man was a federal agent, and the incident underscores how people with active immigration cases but no criminal history are being detained at airports. The top admiral overseeing U.S. Central Command visited the USS Abraham Lincoln and acknowledged the difficulty of the carrier's nearly 9-month deployment, while noting mental health issues were lower than on other vessels. Admiral Brad Cooper said service at sea for long periods isn't for everyone, after seeing poor living conditions and poor morale on the carrier, which is supporting U.S. operations in the Middle East against Iran. Democratic lawmakers have cited reports of shortages of basic supplies, water contamination, plumbing issues, and deteriorating morale aboard the Lincoln. Nature has also caused disruption. Tropical storm Lala lashed Hawaii with heavy rain and wind, damaging or washing away at least 100 homes on the Big Island and leaving more than 150,000 customers without power, according to Governor Josh Green. In the Justice Department, the newly confirmed Attorney General, Todd Blanche, refused to say he would always act independently of White House control, but claimed during a Meet the Press interview that President Trump has never demanded he prosecute specific people. Blanche displayed greater ease fielding pointed questions than his predecessor, Pam Bondi, and sought to balance loyalty to the president with a commitment to even-handed administration of justice. Turning to Texas politics, Republican candidate Brandon Herrera, long an anti-establishment outsider, is trying to help the party defend a red-leaning House district in West Texas, but the effort is proving messy. Herrera joined a campaign event last month with Speaker Mike Johnson. Standing in a San Antonio barbecue joint, Johnson laid out a stark contrast between the two congressional candidates in the sprawling border district, presenting Herrera as the common-sense choice for voters. Meanwhile, Democrats in Michigan face a potential threat from their own nominee. Nate Cohn writes that not all progressives are equal. Candidates of the activist left typically don't perform as well as other Democrats. Although Michigan once seemed a safe Democratic bet in the midterm cycle, polls show the newly minted nominee, Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, could underperform a typical Democratic candidate's vote share by enough to endanger the party's chances. A Fox News poll released Thursday found the Republican nominee leading in several key metrics. A false claim about Iran's nuclear status ricocheted from India to Washington. A dubious post that spread on X became the basis of false claims that Iran's leadership had declared it a nuclear power. On the morning of August 5, an anonymous account on X in India posted that the commander of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps had vowed his country would never give up its nuclear weapon ambitions as long as Israel and the United States possessed those weapons. The claim was untrue, with no evidence the commander made the remark or that Iran has developed nuclear weapons, yet it quickly spread across the internet. In the global race for scientific talent, young researchers have long come to the United States for academic training, but a combination of Chinese money and U.S. restrictions is shifting the balance. While the U.S. remains the leading destination for ambitious scientific minds, funding cuts, restrictive immigration policies and suspicion of Chinese-born scientists are eroding its advantage. China, despite its own shortcomings, is becoming a credible alternative, as illustrated by the recent Fields Medal winners and other recent developments. A lighter-toned piece asks whether one should publicize a bad publicist, noting an intern's dilemma about giving an honest review to a boss. The article explores the ethics of exposing poor performance in public relations without prescribing a definitive answer. Closer to home, Mayor Zoran Mamdani released videos in several languages to highlight a program offering free theater tickets to high school students. His Mandarin earned praise online. When the video dropped showing Mamdani looking directly at the camera and speaking surprisingly good Mandarin, viewers wondered if he had taken secret language lessons, used AI to fake fluency, or simply been diligent with Duolingo. In fact, Mamdani had studied Mandarin at the Bronx High School of Science from 2006 to 2010, though it had been some time since he last used it regularly. New York Harbor's crowded and tricky waterways have drawn attention after a fatal accident. Jet skis and booze cruises veer uncomfortably close to oil tankers and loaded barges. Ferries steaming past the Statue of Liberty send out rolling wakes that rock little sailboats and charter vessels better suited for placid lakes. As one of the busiest cargo ports in the country, the harbor has long been chaotic, and the tragedy has renewed focus on whether everyone knows or follows the rules. Ralph Nader, now 92, remains active despite no longer being in the public eye. Each day he reads several prominent periodicals, breathing new life into his perpetual outrage at the political environment. He routinely contacts his assistant, Shine Pecan, with a list of reporters, academics and elected officials he wishes to reach, and bristles when his messages are not met with enthusiasm. For years, Nader has tried to get reporters, state lawmakers and even Mayor Mamdani to take up various causes, demonstrating his enduring persistence. In film, a new movie depicts the 1986 nuclear arms summit in Reykjavik, Iceland, between Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev, which both offered and dashed hopes of a dramatic breakthrough. Described as something of an Agatha Christie thriller if Christie had written about superpower summits, the film shows the two leaders huddled in a supposedly haunted house built on lava along a windswept coast, with rain lashing the windows and the fate of the world at stake. Comedian Hannah Berner, who hosts the Giggle Squad podcast, has been making the most of a predicament after a jaw injection for TMJ went awry, leaving her unable to smile. She has discussed the incident on her podcast with her bestie and fellow former Bravo celebrity Paige DeSorbo, calling it Smilegate and later the Masseter Massacre. Berner told her listeners, whom she and de Sorbo call the gigglers, that she received an injectable treatment in her jaw that had severely malfunctioned. The first episode of HBO's Green Lantern series, titled Lanterns, offered two very different origin stories for two very different heroes and set an offbeat tone. It retraces the 1959 DC Comics anthology showcase introduction of Hal Jordan, the fearless test pilot who became the Green Lantern. The episode shows Hal floated in a green bubble to a desolate desert, where he finds a crashed spaceship and a pink-skinned alien named Abin Sur. Before the extraterrestrial dies, he deputizes Jordan in the name of the Guardians of the Universe, giving him a powerful ring and assigning him to protect the sector of the galaxy containing Earth. In literature, Katie Simpson Smith's novel The Maltese Version prompts readers to ask whether its 30-something characters are in love, a question that depends on how one defines love. Reviewer Lucy Ives notes that about a third of the way through the book, one of the heroines, Leonie, decides against having a one-night stand, refusing to burrow into some guy's psyche for the pleasure of the unknown. Her reason, love wasn't the same as not knowing. A remarkable feat of endurance comes from a 91-year-old hiker seeking to complete the entire Appalachian Trail. Two journalists, lugging hefty equipment, joined him for a scenic but punishing stretch. Chris Cohen, a freelance reporter based in New York City, and Luke Petrowski, a video journalist at the Times, accompanied Dale Sanders, known as Greybeard, to see how hard hiking with a nonagenarian could be, noting they themselves hike for fun but were documenting Sanders' attempt to reclaim his record. After 3 decades, the quirky gay gossip website Data Lounge is shutting down. Described as an online forum from a time when the internet was funny, wild, and maybe a little reckless, the site is ceasing operations after 31 years. In memoriam, Hayden Panettiere, star of Nashville and Heroes, died at 36. In May she published a memoir after a tumultuous decade marked by depression, substance abuse, losing custody of her daughter and stints in rehab. Also remembered, Tommy John, the pitcher whose name is now synonymous with elbow-saving surgery, died at 83. After tearing an elbow ligament, he underwent a risky procedure and returned at his best, changing the game and giving new hope to injured players. Finally, Zale Perry, an aquatic Hollywood star and early acid tripper, died at 93. A diving feat landed her on the cover of Sports Illustrated and led to a film and TV career. She also took part in one of the first LSD studies. Moving to opinion, a guest essay argues that superheroes have become a bore except for one. David Coleman writes that 14 years after the first Avengers movie, superheroes' supernatural strength, predictable near-indestructibility and multiverse-hopping vehicles no longer resonate with real-world struggles, suggesting readers look elsewhere for inspiration. Another guest essay by Celeste Marcus examines whether cutting off one's parents is the answer for queer people. She recounts growing up in a politically conservative Orthodox Jewish community where gay marriage was deemed illegal and a religious gay marriage a contradiction. When her parents learned she was a lesbian at age 28, her father reacted badly, believing a union with another woman would impede a meaningful Jewish life. Friends urged her to cut ties, calling the situation horrific and morally unjust to remain close. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is the subject of a guest essay by Rhonda Garelick, who describes how the congresswoman fused her body and mind on the public stage by announcing a plan to freeze her eggs and document the process. Ocasio-Cortez showed the medical supplies needed for egg retrieval, swabbed her abdomen with alcohol, took a deep breath and injected a fold of flesh she pinched with her fingers, calling the experience not so bad. Peter Schmidt offers a guest essay on America's literacy crisis, arguing that reports of its death are greatly exaggerated. He notes high school seniors are reading at the lowest levels in over 20 years and college students struggle to read a book cover to cover, but emphasizes that young people, shaped by COVID-19 lockdowns and social media, crave forms of human connection that teach them to live in the world they actually inhabit, not an idealized one. Kojo Koram writes that the race to go global is on for marijuana, noting Europe is not ready. He traces how American brands went global in the 20th century, how AI firms aim to do the same in the 21st, and how cannabis has shifted from being wiped out to legal recreational use in 24 states and medical markets in 41 states, with venture capital flowing into numerous weed companies. Lastly, Obaidullah Bar contends that outdated U.S. policy is hurting the Afghan people. From a Kabul auto repair shop, he recounts a balding, middle-aged mechanic who fought as a soldier for the U.S.-backed government in some of the bloodiest battles of the failed war to prevent the Taliban's return. The mechanic later inspected a car driven by a Taliban official wearing a military-style jacket over traditional dress, highlighting the lingering divides and the need for policies that reflect current realities. That brings us to the end of today's headlines. Thanks for listening, see you tomorrow.